Thank you so much, Jessica, and welcome everybody. I am really excited to be here with you today and feel really honored to be part of this conference. So thank you, Sip. All right, as Jessica said, this is about driving inclusion forward with the power of user perspective. And I am an improvement facilitator with System Improvement Leads, and my name is Sandra Azevedo. I am with System Improvement Leads, and we are a joint collaborative with Riverside County SELPA, El Dorado County SELPA, El Dorado County Office of Education, and are made possible by CCEE, the California Collaborative for Educational Excellence, and also CDE. Our theory of action, which is the why that we do our work, is really, we work mostly with adults, and our thinking is that if we build partnerships with schools and districts, with SELPAs, with other organizational agencies, with CDE, and we build capacity in three primary areas: data best practices, continuous improvement, and provide access to resources in that support high impact change ideas, then we'll be able to support students with disabilities in having those educational outcomes that we want them to have. We would love to have you tweet or X or LinkedIn about us today, anything that comes up today, and also follow us for updates. And we do a summit. We have lots of resources. So please stay connected to us on X, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Our agenda for today, we are going to move into what is user perspective. We're going to discuss 3 approaches for accessing user perspective, and then we're going to spend some time diving into empathy interviews, and then we will close out. It will be really helpful, as Jessica mentioned, to have you engage today. If you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat as the presentation is happening, and I'm happy to do my best to answer them as we're going forward. We know it's always so much better to hear. I mean, this is about elevating voices and hearing from others. So I'd love to hear from all of you as we are going. All right, so our hope is at the end of this, you will feel like you can apply 3 different methods to tap into the experiences and voices of others in their school communities or in your school communities. All right, so what is user perspective? User perspective is defined as a deep understanding of a user's needs, motivations, experiences, and challenges. And when we use this term user perspective, it sort of sounds clinical in some way, but really what we're trying to get at is who are the users in our systems? Who are those groups of folks that use our systems, and how are they experiencing it? What are their needs and motivations as they engage in the systems that we work in? In this context, we're thinking largely of our educational systems. This quote really gets at the heart of what that's about. Those closest to the problem are closest to the solution, but furthest from resources and power. All right, so we're going to jump into these approaches for accessing user perspective. The topic talks about taking an empathetic stance. So we'll talk about empathy more in just a minute, but here what we're trying to do is understand. We want to understand the folks in our community. The 3 ways that we can do that, the first one is immerse. And with immerse, we want to experience what our user experiences. And in just a minute, we'll watch a video to learn a little bit more about that. The second one is observe. And with observe, we want to observe our users in the context of their lives. If we want to understand their experiences at school more, that's where we might want to observe them. Maybe it's in the community or maybe it's at home. So we want to observe them in the context of their lives. And then the third one is engage. And we can do this through interview and what we call empathy interviews. And we're going to spend some more time talking about that in just a few minutes. So as I mentioned, the immerse is about immersing yourself in the user's experience and or situation. And I have a 4-minute video I am, cross our fingers, going to show successfully. And then we will talk about it.
The bell marks the finish line. What's it like having Miss Ritter follow you around?
We're going the wrong way, aren't we?
Having the assistant principal follow you everywhere, it's feels weird.
And for Karen, we checked in with her about halfway through the day.
I'm holding up. I definitely feel like my energy level has gone down since this morning. Great. You know, I had to write an essay in literacy, and I felt like I had a hard time concentrating and trying to focus. Yeah, it's a lot of sitting and a lot of thinking, so.
You can work with your buddies while you go through this one?
Like algebra block, so it's a double period. That was hard, because especially it's over a couple different lunch periods. So every time the bell rang, I wanted to get up and leave, but it's like, oh no, we have another period to go. We have more time to go.
Double period math is one of the remedial classes Alan wants to change.
It's really boring. And it gets me exhausted at times. Just like sitting down for 2 hours.
Why don't you try to write it in self-intercept form?
Gets me mad and sometimes puts me down because I'm like, I could be like learning like new stuff instead I'm like stuck with like something I've been doing for like 7th, 6th, 8th grade.
So what do you want to be doing?
I would like to be taking French, like woods, metals, all those like types of classes.
Because Alan is in the classes that he doesn't have the opportunity for a lot of those electives. He, was placed in certain classes because of his test scores, but I don't know if he necessarily needs to be in that level. What did you get?
I got Y is...
He was getting things and teaching them to me.
Yeah, you got it.
Alan helped me.
Really?
Yes. I think Alan represents someone who is very representative of our school. Middle of the road kid who, when challenged, can reach very high expectations. And I think, maybe keeping him at a certain level might hinder his opportunity to do that. So I would like to see more opportunities given to students, and maybe we need to rethink the way that we place students. Not based on test scores.
How else had her views changed? To find out, we asked Karen to grade East Leiden High School on some key measures, both before and after her shadow day. Keep in mind her view was limited to just Alan's classes. We began with this statement.
In this school, students learn actively, creating, questioning, discovering. Your grade yesterday was a B. Mm-hmm. Today?
I would say a C minus.
Her scores also went down for student engagement, from B to C+.
You said the blue
And relevance.
and the purple.
How often teachers drew a clear connection between students' work and the outside world. That dropped from a C to a D.
So we're looking for creativity.
But her take on school climate and the expectations both remained high.
Yeah, we have some work to do. We have some things that we can fix, but it's a great place. I think we provide a safe environment for kids. We have plenty of resources for them. I think I will do some more shadow experiences with an ELL student, with a special ed student, with an AP level student, because I think they do have different experiences here. That was fun. Do we have to do it again? The point is to know what the students are thinking and wanting and start with them.
In Franklin Park, Illinois, I'm John Tulenko of Education Week, reporting for the PBS NewsHour.
We're going to go ahead and move into the second way that we can access user perspective, and this is observe. And with observe, we want to take an empathetic stance by observing what or how the user is doing or experiencing the situation. In schools, we tend to have a lot of experience in doing observations, and I can tell by seeing who was in the room that, many of you will have done this on a formal but certainly informal basis. So we're not going to spend a lot of time talking about that, but I do want to share a simple scaffold that you might use to think about observations in this context. And it is the what, how, why. So when you're watching, and we'll take, for example, students, you can notice what is it that they're doing. And when you're doing these initial noticings, you can be objective in what you're watching. Just notice, maybe jot down notes. What are they doing? What's surprising about it? And try to stick to the facts in that portion. The second one is the how, which is how are they doing what they're doing? And here you can start to notice, does it look like they're enjoying this? Is it hard for them? Do they appear rushed? Are they frustrated? So you can start to notice how they're doing it and capture some notes around that. And then finally, the why. And this is where you're going to be, making some assumptions about why students are doing that. But think about why, I wonder why they're doing it that way. And those whys can give you clues as to, maybe I should go check with them later. Maybe there's a time that I can say, hey, I noticed you were doing such and such. Can you tell me why you were doing that way? So capturing the what, how, and why in both, simple or more formal observations can remind us that we have a lot to learn about those in our system. Okay, now we're going to get into interviews. So with empathy interviews and interviews that we're going to talk about, that we really want to hear our users' stories, motivations, feelings, and ideas. So what is empathy? Empathy is the ability to be aware of, understanding of, and sensitive to another person's feelings and thoughts without having had that same experience. So we know that we're not going to have the same experience with many of the people in our systems, but what can we do to learn as much as we can about that? And it's not just so that we can understand and support them, but so that we can use what they have to share with us to inform us in how we design our systems better. So we're the learners here, and they're the experts. So with an empathy interview, it's really a conversation, but it's a conversation that's designed to gather that information about that user's experience. And it can be of a specific space, process, objective, or an environment. So perhaps you want to work with a student or find out more from a student, but it might be like, how is the student experiencing a particular class or a particular environment? Might be families. How are families experiencing engagement with the school, maybe in a particular way? And this is useful, as we've been talking about, because knowing how that they experience it, not only does it teach us, but they're closest to the solution. They might have the solution that we wouldn't even know if we didn't ask. So we want that insight from them. So as we prepare for interviews, we want to be thoughtful in a few different ways. Of course, we want to think about who we want to interview. It can be, one or multiple groups. We want to think about who will conduct the interviews. And here it's important to think about power dynamics. There might be certain groups, maybe the principal, maybe teacher, or maybe students are intimidated because it's the principal and there's this hierarchy. So we want to think about how the power dynamics might impact those interviews and be mindful. Perhaps somebody already has a relationship that can be leveraged, and maybe they would be the best person to interview that user. So be thoughtful about who is doing that and whether or not you're the right person. What questions will you ask? We'll talk a little more about those question development, but we want to be thinking about the problem you're trying to solve or the thing you're trying to improve and shaping those questions around that so you can best get that information from them. You want to think about how you're going to approach note taking during the interview. Um, Right, these are empathy interviews, and one of the biggest things we want is rapport and relationship with them. So if we're, like typing or doing notes and not engaging in that eye contact and that back and forth conversation as fluently, it could affect that. So it could be that you just capture the notes immediately after the interview, but be thoughtful about how you're going to do that. And then, of course, logistical things like when and where the interview will occur, and any virtual considerations if by chance it will happen virtually. So some other tips, we want to avoid leading questions. We want to hear what their thoughts are without imposing our own thinking. We want to minimize yes or no questions because we're trying to get at those stories and thoughts and motivations. We want to be cautious about any assumptions we might be bringing into the conversation, and of course, avoid interrupting or speaking over them or finishing their sentences. What we do want to do is utilize those open-ended questions. We want to seek stories. We want to be curious, where we're using things like, tell me more about that, help me understand that. We want to make sure we have distractions minimized. We want to probe for emotions. Example there, how did you feel when that happened? And observe nonverbal cues. And then this really important one at the bottom, recognize your own biases and mental models. We are not neutral people. We show up in our spaces with our own mental models and our own biases, and that certainly frames the questions that we ask and even can, impact the follow-up questions we ask. So be mindful of any mental models or biases you might be bringing into that space, and seek to keep those outside of that interview space. The other thing I want to say is here we're going to have questions, but you're going to deviate from those questions and be conversational. So we don't want us to feel like these questions are a rigid script. All right. This is the arc of a typical empathy interview, and it kind of looks like you might see in a story or a novel where there's this like beginning and then this heightened piece in the end. And this is what we want to think about as we engage with an individual. At the beginning, of course, we want to introduce ourselves and set the context for why we're asking these questions and what we're going to do with these questions. Then we want to have some rapport building time. If you don't know this individual, you might take some time there to understand them and their context better. This is the small talk, normal relationship building kinds of things to do. If you already know them, this can be shorter. Then you want to move into those more thoughtful questions that are designed to get at the information you're seeking from that student, and ultimately build up to getting at those stories and getting at those emotions. So here you're saying things like, could you tell me about a time when this happened and how did that make you feel? And tell me about your thinking during that time and what was the most surprising thing that happened about that. So again, depending on what your topic is, you're going to want to have those stories or those questions crafted, but we really want to get at those stories and emotions from our user. So in short, I like this framing: be human, seek stories, and talk about feelings. Now we're going to get a chance to do a little practice. What I'd like you to do in the next 2 minutes is to draft 2 or 3 empathy interview questions that will help you better understand beliefs and experiences about inclusion. There's a couple examples there. I'm going to be quiet for about 2 minutes unless anybody has any questions, or 1 or 2 minutes, and just jot down two to 3 questions, and we're going to get a chance to practice those in a minute. So finally, what do we do after the empathy interviews? There are a couple different ways that we can synthesize the information that we get. This graphic that you see on the slide here is called an empathy map. And it invites us to take the information we get and put it into what was the user saying, thinking, doing, and feeling. We can also capture like any frustrations or challenges that we noticed come up and goals or successes that they might mention. So you can imagine if you do this over a number of student or a number of users, and maybe other people are as well, it's a way you can bring that together and share that information with each other without necessarily, having pages and pages of information. And you can even extrapolate it and make it confidential, so to speak, if needed. Affinity protocols are another technique, and we have those on our website as well. And with affinity protocols, what you're doing is you're capturing those key themes, like what is coming up again and again, and how we can kind of clump those together and categorize them so we can see those themes that are really standing out across all of the empathy interviews. And then finally, we can analyze keywords. And here you can pull out, like there's a technique called headlining. You might pull out what are the headlines from this, or what are those keywords that we can use to help give us the highlights from the interview without having to know exactly what happened. We also have AI. I know many of us use AI, and while it, can't take away the human component, it can certainly help us synthesize large amounts of data. So that's another helpful tool to consider. We have empathy interview video that's about 6 minutes. We have a ladder of inference video, which helps us think about our thinking and the assumptions that we make. Oh, sorry, I keep clicking in the wrong spot. Okay, and then we have a systems iceberg, which also helps us think about mental models and how can we get to those deeper ways of thinking about our systems so we can better get at those root causes and really change our systems in ways to improve outcomes for our students. If you are interested in more information about this topic, or perhaps you have an event or a staff meeting and you want empathy interview content brought to you, please reach out to us. We are a free grant and we are happy to have that conversation and see if we can support you with that. Our contact information is on there, info@systemimprovement.org.